right, everyone. Welcome to our 25th Rental Roundtable. We've got Andrew Heesacker on from Arvada Rent-All in Colorado. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kyle. Glad to be here. Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah, I love the background. There's no doubt what you guys do, and I like the Zoom background. We've got it around here too, but I like it.
Yeah, for sure. We this picture especially, like, the sunrise and with the machine and truck and excavator, steel tracks, and just really sums up what we did. So that's why I've chosen that for the last. I don't know. I feel like we're all Zoom experts by now, but so yeah, that's what we picked.
That's what we're doing. Well, it's like 105 degrees heat index in Atlanta the last few weeks. Are you guys getting better weather than that, or are you guys bursting in flames too?
We're bursting into flames. We're supposed to be getting into that hundreds later this week. So
yeah, nice and cool.
Not great. Yeah, for sure. It's been weird. We had a few 100-degree days in June, which we don't normally have out here, because like last June we had a record-setting rainfall. So from a weather perspective, we're kind of riding a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, I like it. That's part of the reason why I love Colorado is, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. Is our funny little, so.
Yeah, in Atlanta, if you don't like the weather, it's just going to be hot. So that's
yeah, it's going to be humid there.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't get that here.
Yeah. Well, I see people trickling in: Buck, Desmond, Jeanette, Katie, Suzik. So for people joining now, this will obviously be posted on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music in a couple weeks. Feel free to chat questions in as we go. But Andrew, we go ahead and jump in here. First of all, I'd like to start off with everyone. How'd you get into the rental industry? You've been in here since I think 2007 or so.
Yeah.
Walk me through your journey about how you first heard of the rental industry, how you got involved, and sort of walk me through where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. The company that I am the owner and president and CEO of now, Arvada Rent-Alls, started in 1963, and my dad had been there since 71, and he bought into the business in 1986. So technically speaking, I've been in the industry my whole life. So I grew up going to ARA shows. We had regional shows in Colorado that I have memories of as a kid. And there was a lot of activity back then because the industry was still kind of new in the 90s, relatively speaking. Like United Rental, I think, was 1997, right? And then their growth pattern started shortly thereafter. And there was others at that time, Nations Rent and so on and so forth. But it was just different. There was a lot more, single store locations, I would say, back in those days. So I had kind of that entry level experience. Now, non-traditionally in the industry, I did not grow up on the business end of the broom, right? Most second generations, they work in the store, which is a great way to start in the business. But my dad was always a proponent of let me go out and do what I wanted to do something different, get different experience. So my first jobs, even though they were 14, 15 years old, it was not in the business. So I actually never worked in the business until I came back. So 2007 is when I got my official start out of college with a company called Neff Rental. And Neff Rental was based out of Florida. And they had, 65 or so locations. And they were 99% earth moving rentals. So I stepped from 2007 to 2013 there. So about 6 years, I actually went to Las Vegas for a year and a half and did outside sales there. That's where I kind of learned how to do outside sales. And so I held kind of a lot of different positions with them. And they were, I felt like they were corporately owned at the time, even though in hindsight, it really wasn't that big of a company, relatively speaking. They were purchased by United Rental in 2017. So after that kind of 6 years, I was kind of just, looking for a change, wanting to get out of corporate, and came to work at Arvada Rent-Alls with my dad. So that's how I got started here. That was 2013. And I got really active in the ARA shortly thereafter. And that was when kind of the unprofessional network was up and coming. And so I just kind of dove right in and started learning some hard lessons, going from that corporate mentality to a small single location business. Even though I hadn't been raised in it, was quite an adjustment for me because I was very, I was in my 20s at the time too, so my late 20s. So I was full of energy and just kind of started down the path of where we're at today.
Yeah, well, you're not young, but you're not old anymore. This is, I think, your last year in the Young Professional Network for the ARA, which I definitely recommend. We're part of that. Just to plug that for a second, but I think it's interesting for you. You've worked at a large corporate rental company. You've worked and now worked and now own and run your own, 2-location group. That's, one of the fastest growing, rental groups in the country. You were listed recently on the ARA Market Movers list, which congratulations to that. What do you sort of view as the differences as someone who's operating within a corporate environment, a corporate rental company, to what you're doing now? Are there really any similarities, or is it a totally different, sort of type of job? I'm curious, like your background, you've been able to do both, which is interesting. We've had on people from Sunbelt on the show. We've had on obviously a lot of independents. How does that differ based on the size of the rental company you're working in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, on some level, at the end of the day, we're just renting stuff, right? Like that's all we're doing, right? I think one of my, I'm a big phrase guy. I like funny phrases. I like, silly things. One of my phrases that I like to use is "we are the corporate office." So our leadership team, that's kind of one of the phrases that I use is we are the corporate office. We don't have an HR department that handles onboarding. We don't have it. We have a bolt-on IT company that we use, so we refer to them as our IT department, but kind of like tongue in cheek a little bit. So I think if I was going to answer that question simply, I would say that's kind of that difference. You don't have a robust support system that you can call on and that you can rely on for any type of HR or marketing or any of those types of things. You kind of have to like do it yourself, grassroots type thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you're running the business, you're doing everything, right? You're the CEO, and
you're wearing a lot of hats for sure.
Roughly how many employees do you guys have right now?
So we're currently at about 32 or 33.
Yeah.
So,
and the 32 people, you don't have HR. You probably don't really even need that till 50, 100.
Yeah, but once you get past 50 is what I've heard. So.
Yeah, we're roughly half the size of you. One of our employees was like, so, who's your HR person? Who do I talk to? I'm like, me. I don't know what's the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's the problem? Well, that's that, and then we'll figure out where we need to.
Yeah, like maybe we need an HR person, depending on what you want to talk about. I'm also interested, like growing up, you said you sort of grew up your whole life around the rental industry, going to the ARA events. You weren't working in the industry necessarily, as a teenager, but you were around it. From my experience, for me, like I grew up, and I love my dad if you listen to this, like one of the hardest working, very smart person, but he worked in corporate environments and was always working 6 days a week and was sort of working for the man in a sense. And that experience sort of led me to start my own company because I was like, I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to be able to work flexibly, run my own show sort of thing. And part of why I've sort of start Quipli 4 years ago was sort of how I grew up. Yeah. But I'm curious for you, you saw how your dad was running the business and you gravitated back to the rental industry. You used that experience to kind of pulled you back in. What about growing up around the industry sort of pulled you back into wanting to invest your career into this?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think generally speaking, I kind of have like an entrepreneurial mindset. Like when I was in college, I was kind of doing different things and stuff. And honestly, like as silly as it may sound, I think when I got out of college, I always joke like I would have taken any job out of college. Like I was working for like a agricultural feed store type deal that was based in the college town that I went to, and making virtually nothing, and literally would have taken any job. So it was just the happenstance. Obviously, everybody knows I have a very, unique last name. And that was kind of how the whole thing got started, was one of the guys that was the hiring manager at Neff in Denver at the time was familiar with my dad. So that's how it kind of got started. So, like I said, they offered me, 2 to 3 times what I was making at the feed store deal, and like, done, I'm in, so and I just kind of jumped in with both feet, and I just really enjoy it, and I think it's one of the things that I enjoy about it is something different every day. So that's, I think, really what pulled me in. It wasn't necessarily that I had the background or experience, because I mean, like I said, Neff was corporate, based out of Florida, heavy earth moving. I mean, Arvada Rent-Alls, especially at that time, it was homeowner rental. It was like the biggest item was like a backhoe, and it was just a totally different world. They worked on lawn mowers, and snow blowers, and that type of thing. And so it was really like two totally different things, even though they were both renting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is two totally different environments at the end. Yeah, you're renting something, yeah, but it's like that's not. Yeah, obviously being president of a company is very different than being president of the United States, right? You're both presidents, totally opposite sort of things.
Yep.
What sort of keeps you up at night now? Now that you're sort of your CEO, you're running this business, you've got 33 employees, multiple locations, people counting on you. How does that weigh on you? How do you balance that?
That's a good question. I have to really stay diligent and taking time off. Like I'm not very good at it. I've never really been very good at taking vacations and time off, but, especially like, I don't know what it was about turning 40. I'm like, I feel like I really need to like think about that and just make sure that I do that and understand that there is value in taking that time off, clearing your head, and then being able to think strategically and like from that 30-foot view. So that's kind of that part of it. But as far as like what keeps me up at night, I would definitely say like the culture, because we, as a business, we don't, as we've been talking about, we don't work in a corporate environment here. So realistically, like, why do we get up and come to work every day? I mean, obviously everybody has bills to pay and they have lives to live, but in the same breath, like I want people to want to work here, like I want there to be a good culture where it's not just, oh, we get pizza on Fridays because, we had a good month or whatever, like I feel as like, if this is going to be my life's work, like that's what I want out of it, is for people to actually enjoy working here when they come. And obviously things get difficult, things are tough here and there, but overall, that's really what keeps me up at night, is ensuring the culture is good as it sits and trying to think of new ideas and just stay on top of that and attack it from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, and I mean, Donald Charbonnet actually chatted in. He was actually one of our previous guests. He asked the same question: "What keeps you up at night?" But it sounds like for you, your purpose, a lot of your purpose, what you're building right now, is for the people and the culture and the people who rely on you. 32 people with 32 families and hundreds of probably thousands of renters in Colorado rely on you. And that's what drives you. And you probably didn't have that purpose. Let's say you work in a corporate environment. I worked at Uber in a corporate environment. It was awesome, right? But I didn't have like a purpose, sort of 1 to 15,000 people, right? But running your own business, you feel like what's really getting you up in the morning. It's not the pizza on Fridays. It's the environment for the people who rely on you. Is that right?
Totally.
And that's also what keeps you up at night, though, right? That's what worries you. So like that's the purpose, but it's also the thing that really, when you lose sleep, it's around the people, right?
100%. We just had a situation. I won't go into too many details, but one of our employees, his parents had a very tragic thing happen to them, and it's just really like I feel like I wear that myself, and so yeah, it's definitely that part of the culture that's the most challenging, but also the most rewarding.
Yeah. Well, on the culture aspect, a lot of the groups we've had on here are the leading rental companies like yourself. And one of the themes that's come up, and I a lot of this podcast I'm learning myself, is the importance of organizational structure, people, and culture. Like, how do you build that culture? Like, what are your values? What do you invest in? What types of people do you hire onto the team? Like, how do you develop that culture?
Sure, that's a great question. It's interesting to answer that question, because I feel like it was always like inside of my head and probably in my heart, and I always tout it, but we run on Traction EOS. I'm sure you probably had several guests that run on Traction EOS. It's becoming more and more popular. But I remember reading that book to peer executive groups, which there's a little plug for them as well. But I read that book, I think in 2017 or 18, and just being like, this is awesome. I really felt like it gave kind of a structure to that. So the more we got into it, and we hired a paid implementer, and we began the process in 2020, and we graduated at the end of 2021. So at first it was scary timing with it being COVID time, but then the more we got into it, the more we were like, thank goodness we did this through that time, because with all that turmoil and all that stuff, it was very valuable go through that and to set that structure up. So culturally speaking, to kind of give some of the talking points of what we take from it that helps with culture is, like, for instance, last night we did our state of the company meeting. So every quarter we have a 1 day or 2 day offsite strategy meeting with our leadership team. And we talk about everything. I mean, everything. We talk about the fleet plan. We talk about the sales plan. We talk about each individual person. We talk about it all very in depth. And then we have a state of the company meeting and that's where we, transparency, I feel like, is very important in culture, like letting people know, where we're at, what's happening, where we, Traction has this thing where it's like, where were we, where are we now, and where are we going type deal. So that's huge. And then we follow that up with a one-on-one conversation with every employee. And obviously it's easier with 32 employees, but as you continue to expand your span of control of your leadership people, that's how you kind of handle as you scale with Traction EOS, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll have a one-on-one conversation. And then to answer your question about the values, I mean, anybody that is linked with me on any social media platform probably knows our core values, right? Own it, improve it, and respect it. And then the words that come behind that. So, in addition to that, we hire, we fire, and we manage to those values. They call it the people analyzer. Like, do people live that core value? Do they not? Or are they somewhere in the middle? And we're constantly talking about that, whether it's at meetings or we're putting around up on the wall, or we're, we truly try to live those values. So, so I think that's kind of like the basis. Hopefully that answers your question. Like, that's the structure. Like, yeah, culturally speaking, there are pizza parties on Friday sometimes. Like, sure, sometimes we grill out or whatever. But that kind of structurally, that transparency and that want to have everybody grow with us positionally, that's what really is like the meat on the bone.
I love that. That's an amazing answer. I think culture 101 for a novice is like pizza parties, right? But like culture 401, the top level, is something that is strategically and systemically designed into the organization, right? It's not something that happens naturally. It's something that's designed. I think from my perspective, the things I'm a curious person. Like, I look at all the market mover companies and the top companies in the industry, and what do they have in common? From my perspective, the things I see, like, they're ARA members, they're involved in a peer group. Dan Crowley is a great one to be connected with. And they also use some sort of operating system. A lot of Traction is what we use as well. We had our offsite yesterday.
Cool.
Jeff Lugnageris from Northside Tool Rental talked about that. I think episode 7 here. So you start, like, I have episode 25, you start to talk to people on sort of what are the commonalities of the top groups. There are structures in place around the organization. I've liked the idea that CEO's job is really to build the organization. You build the people, and the people build the business, right? So you taking the time to lay out your values, being transparent is another important value, I think, as a leader. And because then you get trust from people. You get buy-in when things are good or bad. People know that, and they sort of learn to trust you. And I just love how your perspective is like, it's not about a pizza party. It's about the organization that we designed and built over a period of years, right?
Sure. Totally true.
Got another question from Donald. He asked, what's your dashboard? What are the key performance stats you keep up with, and how often? What are your metrics you're looking at a daily or weekly basis? And how often are you looking at those?
Yeah, for sure. And one element of Traction EOS is scorecarding and metrics. And I'm really passionate about it. It's hard sometimes, like, in theory, everybody has a number, right? But, sometimes with us being kind of almost like pseudo service related, sometimes it's hard to, like, what's the number for a yard person,
right.
That's a little difficult, but we continue to work on that and work on that and work on that and build that out. But my all-time favorite is or financial utilization. Like that's, one thing that we look at on a regular basis. Pieces on rent, fleet value on rent. You mentioned routes. Maybe it was before we officially jumped on this, but routes analytics gives some great utilization, both time utilization and dollar utilization. So that's probably like my golden goose dashboard numbers. But I also, how many hours worked for mechanics is good. Down equipment, what percentage of the fleet is down. What, fleet age is another good one to monitor. We do it kind of by cat class, not as, as a whole. Overdue for service. We've really gotten that figured out in the last few months here where, we're actually, we have telematics units on our machines, so they'll pop up on our reports like, hey, this one's due for service, so that we can address it. So hopefully that answers the question on that. Those are like, if I had, 5 or so dashboards that are numbers on a dashboard, that would definitely be it.
Yeah. And do you have a routine for when you look at these, or is it like, hey, it's been a couple of weeks, or are you like every Monday, every morning at 9 a.m.? I mean, how often are you looking at these metrics?
I'm looking at pieces on rent, dollars on rent, down equipment. I'm looking at it, and our leadership team and some of our managers are looking at that every day. We look at all that stuff in our weekly L10 meetings, which is another element of traction, the level 10 meetings. So we track it there, and it's on paper. We can go back and look at it. But yeah, I mean, it's hitting our email box at 6 a.m. every day.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I definitely, the traction book, it's what, $10 or $15 on Amazon. It's definitely a good way to kind of get into the EOS system. Maybe Evan, if you're listening, can you link that in for the audience? And also Andrew's LinkedIn profile, because you have a lot of good content that you like to post as well.
Yeah.
Just for people here. But Donald had another question. Do you subscribe to any new construction lead sources?
Yeah. Construction data is what is called. We used to use at NEF, we use Dodge reports, and that's another common one, but Construct Connect has been one that we've really seen a lot of value with those, this owner is building this project and these are the people bidding on it, and then this is who won it, and like that whole bidding process. So we do use that as a lead source for our sales reps.
Great. And another question from Desmond, you're popular today, Andrew. Majors have announced cuts to previously forecasted rental CapEx budgets for the next 12 to 18 months. Have you had to rationalize your CapEx planning as well in light of supply coming back and a return to normalized growth?
The term rationalize, I think, was what hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. Yes, we absolutely are rationalizing it. And the other item of note in there is, yes, supply chain has kind of caught up. I mean, I feel like since COVID, especially like 2021, once it got really in the throes of it, I mean, things got really crazy where like certain manufacturers were sometimes 2 years out. I mean, that just like kind of disrupted everything in general, because I mean, historically, as somebody that was raised in the industry, you went to the ARA show in February, you found out what you wanted to order and you placed your orders at that ARA show, and then damn near by the time you got home, excuse my language there, that stuff was waiting for you, right? So that changed drastically during COVID, where we were actually ordering for like the next year a lot of times. So we would, in the summer or in, sometimes even in the springtime, we would place our orders for the next year. So now supply chain has kind of gotten caught up, and most of the manufacturers that we use all of the main ones, Bobcat, John Deere, Genie, Skyjack, all of them, John Deere and Toro and all of them, they're a lot shorter on their lead time. So our plan of attack is planning is essential, plans are useless, right? That's one of my favorite quotes. There's another silly quote for everybody. We have a plan, right? So we have a plan for fleet that we want to buy next year. And are we going to stick to that? We'll see how this year shakes out. And then we now, again, kind of have that similar luxury where we can kind of, in January and February, we can reassess what happened 2024 and how we want to proceed forward. So we are definitely rationalizing that.
Yeah.
Year. And we're probably going to be cutting back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing we haven't talked about, which I'm starting to see a little bit of minor cracks in, is the rental industry may, asterisk may, lowercase, may be slowing down. I think the reason I say that is, I was at the Texas Rental Show in June, as we talked about, and I listened to the Rouse Analytics presentation. And in the last 5 years, it's the lowest utilization numbers they've seen across the country, and the lowest rental rates. And I think, I don't know if you're seeing that across some of the other peer groups you're talking to, but I think we have to monitor what's happening in the rental industry. I don't think I don't think it's a pullback by any stretch, but I think things are starting to flatline a little bit more. Potentially, we'll see how the year ends up. But that's something else I'm starting to hear. I don't know if you're hearing that as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing that through my contacts. I have a lot. I just rolled off the area national board and in peer groups, and two of our people are also in peer groups, and I think you're exactly right. Like we're definitely seeing that for this year, and I have been hearing that too, kind of not I don't know, tucking that our hand and saying like it'll be fine, right? But I think we're seeing I'd heard it 6 months or a year ago, and now we're seeing it happen for sure. But
yeah,
as everybody knows, there's external elements that are playing into that with election year and interest rates are the two primary ones, in my opinion, that are really affecting things externally for the industry and not just our industry, construction as a whole.
Exactly. There's just a little bit of uncertainty, and I've heard it too. I mean, I've heard it for years, almost like, the rental industry is going to slow down, but like I think we're seeing a little bit of data points to start to show that. Sure. So we'll see what happens. I think,
and it'll still grow. I think the area predicted it'll be a little bit more modest, which
right.
That's what it is, right? I mean, you can't be, as an industry as a whole. I mean, as a business, sure you can, because you have your internal elements that can provide you growth, but you can't expect to have just year over year the same trajectory.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'll still grow, but slower than previous years. That's sort of take. We got another question from Ahmed. Some more background on your business. How many branches do you have? How many machines do you have? And particularly, leading to the next question, what are the ways you reach customers? How many salespeople do you have? Really, how are you growing your business, especially with the challenges we're talking about, where maybe the rental industry is not growing, 5 to 10% per year, but something, slower.
Sure. So so in the Denver area, Denver, Colorado area, front range of Colorado is primarily what we serve, although we do go to the mountains as well and into Wyoming sometimes too. We have two locations, and Colorado is kind of one of those interesting states where you can really pump a lot of fleet and revenue through. You don't need to have 10 stores. It's not like we don't have a lot of condensed population like I'm thinking of in New York or a California, where it's like you need to have the location to get the fleet and to get the revenue. Like there was people in Colorado that had, $80-90 million in fleet out of 2 or 3 stores, right? So that's kind of how we're approaching it as well. So we have 2 stores, 2 sales reps. We're going to have a 3rd sales rep here very shortly, later this summer, and then a 3rd location next year that's going to be more kind of a little out of Denver, but we'll kind of serve, that whole northern and Denver area.
Great. Well, I didn't know about their location. Congrats on the expansion. On the growth side of things, like how are you finding new customers? Is it outbound salespeople? Is it internet marketing? We talked to Rodney Coker 2 weeks ago, and he bought 20,000 hats, and he's been handing them out to people, right? And like that works for him, right? It's getting a lot of business that way. He's had a lot of success with paid advertising. Roughly $2,000 to $3,000 a month of paid budget has been working for him. Like, what are your primary 1 or 2 sort of growth levers if you are trying to find new customers? How are you doing that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we definitely don't have 1 or 2. We have like 10, right? So, I'm a big believer in being diversifying, several different avenues of attack. Outside sales force where their entire job is, pounding the pavement, so to speak, and developing relationships. Internet marketing, SEO, definitely a big deal there. Community stuff, like we sponsored a rodeo like a couple weeks ago. We did that. There's a harvest festival that comes up in September every year that we put our truck and trailer, our semi with some equipment on the back, and we put it through this parade or whatever. So community stuff are huge deal with the community. We actually wrapped the boom list with the nonprofit. I don't know if you had seen that, Kyle, on social media, but that one was pretty cool too. So we do that kind of thing. Rodney's hitting the nail on the head with the swag thing. He does a great job of it. Like with this, he does great t-shirts and stuff too. But yeah, that part, just getting the brand awareness built up. So I think that's a big part of it. Those are kind of the main ones, I guess. But there's some other ancillary ones as well.
Yeah, I think the good or bad news is there's not a silver bullet. Typically, like, when a customer decides to rent with you, the ARA's put out 80% of them do internet search, right? So they're going, you have to search, you have to be FF to SEO, you have to have a modern looking website, you have to have equipment availability, likely pricing as well, is what we see. But then you have an event and they get a customer referral, and then there's a paid budget, and they see someone with a hat. All these things together, there's like usually 7 or 8 touch points, and you go, okay, now I've decided to rent with Arvada, right? It wasn't just one salesperson just doing a bunch of cold calls, right? It's usually multi-touch point. And that's the hard part about marketing. It's hard to attribute sometimes, but all these things sort of compound and add up together.
For sure.
A couple more questions here from folks. One is, this is maybe more for your put on your ARA hat, as one of the board members. So sort of like giving advice to someone launching a new rental business. If you had to sort of simplify like guidance or most effective approach to launching a rental business, and sort of how many pieces of equipment do you need to start, and sort of what are like the, I guess maybe top 2 to 3 things you'd recommend for someone who's thinking about entering the rental market, really starting from cold start.
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend kind of doing what you can for like marketing research and just finding out what works for people. There's a couple of really good Facebook groups, like the rental group is one that I'm in, and there's a couple ARA ones as well, where you can kind of ask like, what are some of the main items that rent for you? Because it's also like regional too, right? Like there might be something that works really well in Denver that like they don't understand, like heaters, right? Like Florida people would be like, you guys rent heaters for job sites, right? So there's that regional aspect to it. So because what comes right on the tail end of that is like what the customer needs, like what is the need, right? So you can, if you're savvy with SEO, I know there's people that kind of cultivate it that way, where they're like, oh, what, is it, and aerial is always usually a safe bet. There's in any market anywhere, there's people are going to need a rent schedule list, they're going to need a rent boom list, right? So you can always start there. I think once you start building that up and seeing, then you're looking at your time utilization, you're looking at your dollar utilization, you're trying to watch your rental rates. Most people have them published on their websites, whether it's Home Depot or United Rental based on your zip code or whatever. So you can kind of get started there and looking to see where you need to be at. There's a plethora of industry publications. You can watch all 25 now episodes of Quipli's deal. But just trying to be silly there. But those are kind of the things that I would start. But essentially at the end of the day, it's like, what does the customer want, right? And we ask every customer, we send them a text. We have a marketing company that helps us with this, where every customer, upon completion, we get a report every day that has their cell phone and their name and what they rented, and we send them that to ask them for feedback, and then it feeds our Google reviews. So realistically, like from a marketing perspective, like you gotta meet those customers where they're at, right? They need to rent stuff. You need to find out what it is and what makes your customer base tick. That hopefully answers that question.
Yeah, and crawl, walk, run. Don't go buy 100 pieces of equipment. Sort of ease into it.
And let's do that just like millions upon millions of dollars. Just start buying stuff, see what works. Sure, but
which mean you bet.
You have so much
stuff like that.
Right, exactly. But I've known of people. There's somebody in our town here that's got a couple of mini X's and a skid steer that they just put flap a rent sticker on it. Josh Nichol would say the sharing or circular economy, right? That's something that's becoming more and more popular where, people, they don't, especially millennials, Gen Z, and I'm sure Gen Alpha will be even more magnified, where they don't need to own everything, right? They don't need to, they don't want stuff. They don't need to hold on to all this. They don't need to own, a tiller or a chainsaw or anything like that. Like they don't have any sense of pride wrapped up in the ownership of these types of assets. So they'll in turn rent them.
Yeah. And we know, I probably talked to dozens, maybe more, just very small rental companies moving into an established group, buying their first location. But look, one of the things I see often is they use Facebook Marketplace a ton. And that is like free, easy. You've got to figure out a way to make sure you get a signed rental contract and payment securely, right? And systems out there to help with that. But that's an easy, free way to get started. And someone else asked around any like sort of middle platforms. Have you had any success with Big Rents or Dozer or anything like that? Have you dabbled with that at all?
Yeah. We. I'm as we've talked about, Kyle, and one of the reasons why you asked me to be on this. I like tech, right? I'm not like the guy that'll, you know, be able to speak coding, or, my wife could be a data scientist and coder. So there's like, I'm not like that, but I love the technology aspect to it. And I remember years ago when really Big Rents was like the first one that was coming up somewhat aggressively. And everybody kind of was like, who are these guys, And now they're on the RER 100, right? So it's like, it's kind of become this crazy big shift for how you find customers, right? And they're basically kind of in that middle space, whether it is, a Dozer or whatever. I'm pretty sure Quipli Share started that way as well, if I remember right, back, however long ago it was. So yeah, we do work with those companies. What we usually find in Colorado is those rentals are rentals that maybe they weren't having luck finding it, like a United rental or a Sunbelt rental, because it's a 1-day rental in Vail, Colorado for a sizzle lift, right? So it's $100 rental, it's 1 day, $150, but it's also like 3 hours from town, and you have to have skilled drivers to go into the mountains, right? So that's kind of what we find a little bit here and there, but we do work with Big Rents and Dozer primarily.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to some other questions here in a second, but I do want to talk about technology, because you mentioned that was one of the topics I did want to talk to you about, because, you're always been innovative, sort of trying new things on the technology side. From my perspective, top 10% in terms of leaning into that. And there's a lot of people who are not leaning into that. And you have a middle 80%. You've always been sort of an early adopter. What are some of like the technology aspects, including whatever you want to talk about, but telematics, customer portals, et cetera, that you think rental companies should be testing and experimenting with right now? And where does that go in the future if we go 3 to 5 years out? What sort of other technology should people be looking at?
Yep, definitely. I think one little anecdote that I remember, like based on technology that I remember, is, probably it was at an ARA meeting. I know when I first was getting into it, Smart Equip was first coming online. It was like very early in Smart Equip days. And I just remember being like, that is a great idea. And for anybody that doesn't know, Smart Equip, essentially it's like a parts organ. So you can have like your parts breakdown, right? So you have a boom lift that has, and they have, this bolt and this cylinder and all that. You can have this breakdown, and then you can click on them, add them to a cart, and then if hopefully your point of sale system interfaces with it, which Alert also does, and I'm sure Quipli does too. So it's like this seamless parts ordering system, and it costs like what I felt like, 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was like so much money, but it's since kind of become more manageable. So I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when you're talking about technology, is there is that kind of upfront cost, but everything kind of continues to come down, and it kind of like, it's like people it gets easier, it gets more, we figure out how to fine tune it, and it becomes easier to adopt, right? So, I mentioned Smart, but we talked about routes. I love that. Telematics. I wouldn't want a rental company without telematics, especially this day and age, because, we've had several issues the last couple of years, some that have been in industry publications, where we've had items that were, almost brand new. We had a forklift almost brand new that was stolen and taken to California, and we had telematics on it. We were able to find the item, get it back, right? So telematics is insanely crucial. There's a million of them, as everybody probably knows. But I think it's important. And I think the next question that you have to ask your rental person, does it interface with our point of sale system, right? So that's huge to me, is at least to have that link, so you can kind of start to link stuff together. You mentioned customer portals. I think that's a must. Personally, I think, because think about it, right? Amazon, like, I can go on my phone and I can order, whatever, and have it to my house by the time I get home from work today. Like, that's the culture that we're in. So as a rental company, whether you're small or big, you need to find a partner, whether it's, Quipli, or we use alert software, or I'm sure the other ones do it as well, but make sure that that's important. Something that you look at it. Do they have a customer portal? How does it work? Does it work? Do the end users get value out of it. That's what we were looking for, and that's what we have currently. You know, you can log in, you can see your invoices, you can pay your invoices, you can schedule rentals on the website. You know, like that's kind of one of Quipli's big pushes is scheduling those rentals to try to make it easier for the end user. That's what it is. Because small medium-sized company, we don't have the budget that a United Rental or a Sunbelt or a Home Depot does. So we have to try to keep up with that, and that's where the point of sale kind of comes in. So yeah, I think those are kind of like the main technology. I made a couple notes to make sure I didn't forget any technology things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've seen since 2020 was putting prices online, and online renting was like, we'll see. And now in 2024, it's like, okay, we need to do it. I talked to a group yesterday who said, we need e-commerce and we need a customer portal because we were actively losing business to United Rentals because they want to click buttons online. And like that has changed in 4 years, and it's becoming more requirement. And I think people hear me talk about this, and Angie, you probably heard me talk about it, but United Rentals came out in Q1, 70% of the revenue was from technology, digital channels. So the website and the app, customer portal, 70%, right?
Wow.
$1 billion.
Wow.
You know, it was crazy, right? I think ARA is coming out. They, the numbers I see, 20%, 25%. That's sort of where we see too, like 25% of orders come through the website, which is meaningful. Like if I told you you're going to lose a quarter of your business, right? Because you didn't have this technology, right? That's meaningful.
I figured it out, yeah.
Then you go, okay, why is it 70%? Well, United you've been on this for 10 years, putting millions of dollars into it, pushing it, et cetera, right? So, but that shows you where the market can be with the right focus and adoption, the right technology partner, the right buy-in from the team, training, distribution, et cetera. I just think it's interesting, right? Because I think the number in 2020 was probably 10%, and it obviously shows the upside. It's probably closer to 70% of where this really could go with the right infrastructure.
Yep, totally. And then the other one that I got from my little reminder sheet here was like, Donna mentioned dashboard, but dashboard like in the shop. Like we just got one online about a month ago where we have today's rentals and then we have tomorrow's rentals, and it kind of cycles through. And we partnered with a company that is kind of responsible for, like, if you imagine, I don't know if you've ever been in a drive-through where they have like a digital board, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even like McDonald's nowadays, they have it's like a TV, right? Where it's got, and then they can change stuff. That's essentially the same technology that we have been working with to try, it's like time, what the item is and any add-ons, which should keep it simple. But it's like, imagine it's just like, you're working at Chick-fil-A, right? Which they have like the best service ever, right? It's that same deal. So like our yard people and our mechanics can see what's going out today, what's going out tomorrow, and they can see it from there.
That's awesome.
We're working on some other stuff too with the work order dashboards and stuff like that.
Jericho, I mean, if you simplify like the big five you talked about was Rouse, Smart Equip, you talked about customer portals, you talked about telematics, you talked about online renting, right? I think every rental company needs to at least explore that seriously, all five of those.
For sure.
Where do you think, what's the future? Particularly, I'm interested, do you think there's a role for AI in equipment rental, artificial intelligence?
I think there could be some AI on like the service end of things. Like, I'll give you an anecdotal hypothetical. We in Colorado, we have compressor blowout season is coming, right? Like in September, it's when it kind of starts, and then it's really in the thick of it in October and November. And for those of you that are warm climates, essentially everything freezes in the winter, so you have to blow out the lines for your sprinklers before it freezes. So compressors, like if you had 100 compressors, usually your diesel 90 CFM or 185 CFM. If you had 100 of them, you could rent them, right? Like there is just everybody trying to make a buck, right? To try to get this done. So I think from an AI perspective, you could have like it knows it could know and could predict based on a little bit history and a little bit, like trends. Like, oh, we need to start looking at those compressors now. Like our team right now, especially our leadership team, like we have so much experience. Like we're having our shop look at those air compressors that need repair right now, right? 2 and 3 months before. But that's just because our brains, and we've been doing this for, 20-ish years each of us, right? So we just know. But I think AI can kind of come and help that, as it comes, like oh, it's a Saturday in the springtime. You need to make sure that all your aerators are ready to go. These are the units that need to be repaired right now.
Yeah. I think so predictive maintenance.
Yeah, predictive maintenance for sure.
Yeah. I think top. Yeah, we've got a couple minor AI features. We're experimenting with it, but I think, I went to an AI conference in March. So I am interested because I do think at some point in 5 years that it will become some use cases within rental software in particular, because I think that's the natural point to sort of integrate some of this. But what I've been hearing is sort of where AI is today. It's smarter, or it's essentially like as smart as like a college student, which is like, okay, cool. You can get a college student for very cheap using AI, right? In 2 years, it'll be the smartest person who's ever lived. And in 4 years, it'll be smarter than all people who've ever lived combined. And like, okay, I can start to comprehend that, but like
take over the world, right?
Yeah, in 6 years, it's not yet. No, but I do think there's like, can you strategically leverage it in certain small, focused use cases, right? The other area that's come up, I've always thought about this, and I was off on this. I think we were on the online renting, but on dynamic pricing, I think we had not nailed that. But that's coming up more often. People are asking about that because you got like an airline or hotel, you've got fixed supply for the most part.
Hotel, Airbnb, that's a huge example. I mean, yeah, that's a good one. You guys have been on the forefront of that because we've been talking about it nationally, for years. But it's hard. That one.
It's hard. We haven't figured it out yet. But we, rather than me spewing thoughts, like people are coming to me and go, "Have you thought about this?" Like, yeah, we have thought about it. But it's interesting now. I think the timing's maybe not 2024, but I think in a couple of years that's going to become more common. Like particularly if you can integrate it into your workflows.
And so just off the cuff on that one with the dynamic pricing, like I think it's just like, because a lot of I feel like it's viewed, either by the rental operators or potentially by their customer base as well, as like maybe like price gouging, right? Like they may feel like they're getting price gouged, like, oh well, you're just taking advantage of me. But then in my head, I'm like, well, the same thing that's happening over here in rental cars, houses. Like think about rental cars, but the one big difference between the rental car industry and the equipment rental industry is fragmentation, right? Like there's only a handful of rental car companies, right? So if they feel gouged, then you only have so many choices. But in the rental industry, I know there has been a lot of M&A activity, but there's still, I mean, Josh Nickel would probably know the number off the top of his head, but there's still a lot of single store operators across the country, right? So that's like why it's still like that, where it's like, well, we don't really want to just charge people more because we have less, like depending on the situation, of course. But I don't know, just a thought that came in there.
Yeah, and I think people, the natural reaction is, oh, price gouging, you're gonna raise my price. It's like, well, actually, it's about increasing utilization, which means lowering prices sometimes too, and giving people flexibility. Because if you're not time sensitive, like rent an
aerator in the spring on a Wednesday morning, right? Because everybody's at work, right? You can get half price. Like I totally get that for sure.
Yeah, so I think something that I thought about 2020. It hasn't happened yet, but I think by 2028, I do think that's a new trend that will start to come up. But I may be wrong again. Who knows? Hit rate's like 20%. I actually had a question. Did someone ask if this Quipli integrate with any telematics providers? We don't, though we've been wanting to. Man, yeah, question for you, Andrew. Who are your preferred telematics vendors? Like who, and also for rental companies, right? If they're thinking about getting a telematics provider, who would you recommend?
DPL is who we use. Yeah, because they do interface with Alert about 95%, and then they've also been really easy to work with, and their platform is good, right? It's really good. It's where it's like you can pull up on your phone, you can search unit numbers, you can see this and that, and they've been really, really good to work with. But functionality wise, they've been really good. So I couldn't ask for much more. Plus the integration with the sales system.
Yeah, I've heard good things about TPL. That's probably like one of the number one players. So we got a couple questions I want to get back to. One was around advice for opening additional locations. So you're about to go through that process, or going through that right now, launching the third location, I guess, in January. So is that what you said, January or Q1?
July.
Wait, next July or this July?
Next July. Yeah.
Okay, year out.
1 year from now. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so you're your year out. You're already starting to plan that. I guess the question is, what advice would you give for someone who's got one location, they're going to two, going to three? What are some of the things that led you to that decision, and some of the considerations that people are thinking about as you launch that additional location?
Yeah, for sure. because our second one was an acquisition of a business that had been there for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that that was slightly easier in the sense that there was already like customer activity existing. We had to make some changes and get it really more suitable to our culture and our brand and stuff. But to make a long story short, but there was some value there in the acquisition aspect of it. As far as greenfield concerned, it's gonna be my first one. Fortunately, I had a peer group that has had people that have done it, so I'll obviously be talking with them. And I have a pretty good plan in my head of like, start SEO, geo marketing, 6 months in advance. Start having a sales rep go out and build the customer relationships previous to opening, like those types of things from that aspect. But I'll have to say I'm probably going to learn a lot next year. This time next year, we wouldn't be able to have this call this time next year because I'll be doing that.
I'd be interested to have it like next fall, like after you've launched it, and go, okay, what did you learn? Also,
there we go. I'll have a lot more to answer on that.
What did not go well? Yeah, that's usually where we learn most.
For sure.
But it sounds like, biggest thing, you're starting sales and marketing 6 months ahead of time, right? And SEO in particular takes 6, 12, 24 months sometimes to really pay the dividends of that. But you're starting to get demand, get traction. It can probably help you also indicate what pieces of equipment you need to buy based on some of the market reception you're getting too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like if they're searching, for a walk behind kids here, if we're getting a lot of those searches, like, then we know we need to either speed that up or make sure that we have some of those assets earmarked,
Yep.
For sure.
Another question from Donald from earlier was, are you a dealer for any particular manufacturer? Do you do new sales, service, and parts, or are you just mostly rental?
So when I started with Arvada Rent-Alls, we were pretty heavy on the small equipment dealership side of things. Honda, Toro, Steel were the three main ones, but there was also some other ones, Kohler and stuff like that. I quickly, once I started digging into numbers and stuff, figured out that lawnmower business and snowboard business was very hard to make any money with. Anybody that has any familiarity with that business knows that as well. And plus everything's going to battery now. Like Honda doesn't even make their lawnmower line anymore, which I think is kind of crazy, but it is what it is. We did, however, to answer the question, retain the Steel chainsaw brand because for several reasons. One, honestly, just my own feeling and nostalgia. My dad and his partners started with the dealership in Steel in the 80s, kind of before it was even really a thing in America, and they built it quite significantly. We're the top steel dealer in the region for volume wise, so it's like kind of there. And we have put some metrics and stuff around that department to ensure that we're maintaining a profit. Obviously, the EBITDA percentages are not nearly what they are in rental for that, but that's why we chose to stay with that. And we kind of went all in. I'm sure I put them on social media, but we really like renovated our steel department, like different floors and branding, and just really like it looks like it looks like a steel like dealership. It looks like you'd go into a Ferrari dealership, and that's the feel you want to go. Like, you're going to get top level service here for sure.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, what are the top 2 or 3 things for sales and marketing? I was like, well, there's like 10 plus, and one of them is having a nice showroom, having a nice physical location, right?
Very, very good point.
One more question on the big rent stoter stuff. Disadvantages for using that, and the other question is, what percentage of your revenue is coming from those platforms? Is it less than 10%, or is it?
Oh yeah, it's definitely less than 10% in our. I've heard in other markets, certain dozers or big rents or several others that are a lot more active, and I don't know what the market has to do with that or whatever. But for us, it's probably, they're like less than 1%. I would say of our revenue, to be honest.
Yeah, that's usually what I hear. It's like an interesting thing, but it's not really that meaningful typically.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I know there's some businesses that are like, man, we do a lot with big rents or whoever, wherever the market is. So again, I think it just depends on the market. It depends on how good you have your own SEO, right? Because that's their whole deal, right? Is they're basically like, they don't own any equipment, right? So it's just purely SEO, and they're just grabbing people that are searching boom lift near me or boom lift rental, right? Like in those specific areas. So If you can fight back against that, then it kind of cuts down the need for it. As far as disadvantages, I don't think there's really any disadvantages because they're either, you know, they could find us direct, which that would be ideal, but they could also just as easily find United, Sunbelt, Herc, or Home Depot, right? So to me, I'm like, all rents are big rents, or those are all day. Like, as long as it's not an actual competitor that's getting that rental, we're still getting it, and then that's really what matters to me. As from the only, and it hasn't really come up, knock on wood, of course, but anytime if there was like a maintenance problem or some damage like that, that could potentially be an issue because you're not dealing directly with the end user, you're dealing with the kind of that secondary / middle person deal there. So, you know, I think we have had some minor things here and there that were a little bit problematic, but I just see that could probably be one disadvantage if you were really all in with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. We still have a couple minutes left. I did want to get to the last topic, which was sort of, you know, mental health awareness. That's something that's been important to you. You know, you've talked about that on LinkedIn and the importance of supporting employee wellness in a small, medium-sized rental company, particularly around mental health. Talk to me about why that's important.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely very important to me. Like honestly, I just personally, I feel like there's kind of a societal impact of mental health, like whether it's, you know, unhoused people on the streets or whether it's veteran suicides or any of those types of things. I just think that like it's just an issue in our culture right now that it's very important to me to not look the other way from it. So I think, you know, and so now I'm in this capacity, right? I'm in this, you know, business ownership, entrepreneurship. There's 32 people that I'm, you know, that are around me that are in my circle of influence directly. So that's why I think when the opportunity through our local chamber came to do the mental health first aid certification, I jumped on that, and that's kind of what then got me into the ARA because I did post that on LinkedIn. So they put me on a panel, you know, next to Brad Barber, the CEO of H&E, right? So like a higher level people and some other people as well that joined in on that. So it was just really good to have the ARA, the American Rental Association, have kind of our back on that as well. Of like, let's collectively as an industry take this on however we can, right? So I know we don't have much time. I do have some stuff on the LinkedIn if you want to check that out or whatever. And I think you can get a hold of that panel webinar too through the ARA. So you can probably get it there too, where there was some really good discussion. But one thing that I didn't realize, like probably the biggest takeaway as we started to like really get into that, was if you have a payroll provider, like we use Paychex, but like ADP is probably like the biggest one. And then there's like Workday or whatever is the big one. If you have those, or if you have health insurance through like a broker, like we have Kaiser in our state, they offer what's called an EAP, which is an employee assistance program. And that actually gives people resources for mental health up to and including like an actual personal therapist, right? So like it really is robust. And I was like, you guys have this for free and like you didn't tell us? You know, obviously I'm getting 10 million emails a day. So like some stuff falls through the cracks, but that's one thing that anytime anybody asks me this question in this sort of format, I'm like, yeah, go there first, check it out, look for an EAP, an employee assistance program. It's probably there. You're probably already paying for it or it's in your package with those companies. Because at the end of the day, and that's what we talked about on that ARA panel is, there's no reason to hold this. That's why we had United Rental representatives on that panel and H&E and Sunbelt. They all came to the table because they're like, this isn't for us to hold. This isn't like proprietary customer type data. This is like stuff to help the entire industry. Like it needs to be a collective effort and needs to be large. So let's all kind of try to do what we can and try to erase the stigma around mental health and just address it, talk about it, provide the solutions, and handle things as appropriately and professionally as you can when stuff comes up. So
yeah, I love that. I love seeing you post about that. That was the first time I heard the rental industries talking about mental health. I've heard in other circles. I've been in technology companies. They've always sort of leaned into that, but
sure.
Important. We're all humans first. Everyone's dealing with something, and especially as a leader for yourself, with 33 people relying on you, like being able to least open the forum and have the conversation. Like, you don't need to talk about it if you don't want to. You don't need to go see someone if you don't want to. But like, let's just make it a non-stigmatized topic, because it has been for a long time and still is in a lot of different areas. So I think it's something we'll probably talk about again in the future. I just saw from your post 1 or 2 months ago, and I'm excited to see you lean into this, the ARA lean into this as well. I think it's so important because
for sure.
We're all people. And I think also for the leader too, like, I think the leaders also need to invest into their mental health, right? It starts at the top, right? If you're off balance and it funnels downstream. So wish we had more time to talk about that. But, for people listening, check out Andrew's LinkedIn profile. He posted about this. And, I imagine the ARA will likely have more to say on this topic in the future. So excited to hear about that. Cool. Well, Andrew, thanks for coming on episode 25. Lots of questions today. It was great having you on, and appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks for sure. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you guys.